What should the Saints asking price for Sean Payton be? We are reacting to ESPN 104.5 Matt Moscona after a further review with ESPN's Catherine Terrell. She's a beat reporter for the Saints. Follow her on Twitter. She's always giving great updates. So let's go ahead and react to what's going on here. The question posed is, what's the Saints asking price for the great Sean Payton?
Sean Payton to say, do you think that, number one, is he going to be coaching in 2023?
Yes. Now, before she can answer, let me go ahead and answer a few things of my own. The Saints you got to think about who the audience is or who you're selling Sean Payton to. I'll tell you who. Pissed off owners, right? The Denver Broncos, the Arizona Cardinals, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Dallas Cowboys if they go and get beaten in Tampa. You're going to have pissed off billionaire owners who are used to getting everything they want, and on top of that, they're more than likely embarrassed. They're embarrassed by either the last year's performance, they're embarrassed at how they played the playoffs, they're embarrassed of whatever. The Saints hold so much leverage. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, the Saints should get a first-round pick, or the Saints should get 2/3 and a fifth. Okay, but let me put it to you like this. Chase Claypool was traded to the Bears for a first-round pick. I believe he was traded for the 32nd pick. When you put it like that, Marquise Brown was traded to the Arizona Cardinals for a first-round pick. When you think about what teams are doing when they're desperate, what teams are doing to trade players and to trade for an answer and a solution, the Saints, I think, should absolutely hold out minimum 2 first-round picks. Minimum. That's where the conversation starts. Because here's the sweet thing. If the whoever the Cardinals will say, if they're like, no, we're not trading you 2 first-round picks, guess what the Saints can do? They can hang up. That's it. Because if the Saints don't want to trade Payton, he isn't going to those places. And I guarantee you the Denver Broncos, who just got bought by the Waltons, they just paid, $4 billion for the Denver Broncos? You think they're going to sit there and go to war with another Nathaniel Hackett? Or do you think they're going to trade 2 firsts if they have to, and get Sean Payton while they have 34-year-old Russell Wilson on a $200 million deal? So the Saints need to hike up that asking price.
I think he is, because coaches that want to get back in the game don't like to stay away from for very long. So if he's still out there next year, it kind of makes me wonder how much he really wants to coach again. When Bill Cowher stepped away, I felt like for years people thought that he was going to go back, and he never did. And eventually, as the years went on, that stopped being brought up. But Payton kind of seems a little...
I definitely agree with what she's saying. I think coaches, the longer they're away, and I think it's real quick. I think you have like a 2-year window, 2-year max probably. If you're away, it's much harder to go back. Like 1 year, sure, you take a year off, you take 10 months off, you can jump right back in. Not much has changed. You take 2, 3 years off, 4 years off. Not only has the game passed you by, but how much are you watching? How much are you watching? When you think about how much coaches watch film and watch tape and break down rosters, you just can't do it at that level if you weren't in the film room. Let's say Sean Payton sat on the sidelines for another year, another season. How familiar is he with the rosters of the NFL? Let's say then he joined the Cardinals. How familiar is he with the roster? How familiar is he with the division roster? The group of people coming in for the draft? There's so many things that you have to be so in tune with to be one of those coaches in the NFL. I 100% agree. I think Sean will be coaching next year. If you told me that Sean sits out this year and the next year, and he's gone for 2 full seasons, and then we do the coaching carousel, I'd be kind of surprised if he comes back after that point, because then you get more used to life, you get more used to time away, you get more used to playing golf, whatever you want to do. On the flip side of that, it wouldn't terribly shock me if Sean didn't come back after year 1, strictly because there may be no landing spots. He may look at his landing spots and say, well, I can either not go back, or I can choose from Arizona, who just fired their coach, put their GM stepped aside. Oh, and their $120 million quarterback just had ACL surgery. I could go there, I don't really think you can go to Denver because I don't think they have the draft capital. You can go to the Rams, who have no draft picks, whose team is in complete shambles, who are terrible, and people are leaving the roster with nothing. You have no quarterback or anything, any future. So I think if you're someone like Sean Payton, I think you would rather just chill than go to Carolina, or to go to the Rams. So if that's the case, if that's what he's looking at, I think he'll take a good job. Like if Dallas goes and loses to Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs, and Jerry Jones is like, "Look, McCarthy, this ain't gonna work, pal," and he offers Payton, I think Payton will be in Dallas. But I don't think Payton's so thirsty to come back that he'll go take the Panthers job.
A little bit different. He's talked about coming back multiple times. He's kept himself in the news cycle. He said what he would do to fix Russell Wilson. He said that he's joked with Mickey Loomis about spending or trading for Taysom Hill. So all of these things, it's in addition to his gig on Fox, keeps him in the news. And I think that there's part of that that's on purpose, so people don't forget about him. So I guess I would be surprised if he's not coaching in 2023. But the reason that would happen is that he didn't like the options that were available.
The options right now are the Texans, the Panthers, the Colts, the Broncos, the Cardinals.
Texans are a great example. Why the hell would he go to Houston? Like, why? I don't even know if I would go to Houston. If they called me and they were like, "Hey, James, look, we want you to come be the general manager of the Texans," I don't know if I'd do it. I had to really I had to really take a hard, long think about that. I mean, you're talking about just a failure of an organization. So for Payton, a lot of the times I think people get caught up in this like game of Madden or this like fantasy football game where they're just like, yeah, he'll just go to whatever, the Raiders, and he'll bring Aaron Rodgers with him, and he'll do this and he'll do that. And it's like, or the Broncos are a great example. He'll just go to Denver. He'll go to Denver. He'll fix Russell Westbrook. He'll fix Russell Wilson, and we'll be good to go. And then you look at it, and you're like, Denver doesn't have any draft picks. Like, how's Denver going to get Russell Wilson? They traded their draft picks or to get Sean Payton. They traded their draft picks to get Russell Wilson. What a tongue twister that was. Good Lord. So those teams don't even make sense. The Rams are similar. The Rams traded. They haven't had a first round pick in years. Who exactly is going to do that? And let's say you take a team like Chicago, right? If you're Chicago and Chicago has the first overall pick, and you're Sean Payton, why would you want to go somewhere? I guess if the package was all right, we'll use Houston. Houston has the second overall pick. But if you're Sean Payton and you're like, all right, I'm going to Houston, but in order for me to get there, I have to give up my second overall pick, and I'm staring at Davis Mills and Kyle Allen. Like, that sucks. It's kind of turned into a paradox where the teams that can trade for him, why would he want to go there? His choice destinations don't have the capital to trade for him. So the thing I've been saying the whole time, I want to make this real clear. I've said this 2 months ago, 3 months ago now. The easiest path to him to get back to the NFL with a half-decent roster is to go right back to the Saints. Don't have to worry about trade and all kind of stuff. Don't have to worry about a completely depleted roster or a total shit situation. You just go back to New Orleans. Everything's cool.
Any of those make the most sense, or does one make more sense than the others?
I think the Saints would welcome him going to the Panthers because they would ask for more compensation than they would ask for a team out of the division. But it doesn't really seem like that's going to happen. The Cardinals seems like a possibility. The Broncos seems like a possibility, although, if the Broncos are going to trade for Sean Payton, they already made the Russell Wilson trade. So that's a ton of picks they're giving up in 2 years.
That's what I'm saying. Catherine knows what's going on. Follow her on Twitter. She's saying a lot of the same stuff I'm saying. And if she's agreeing with me, she knows what's popping.
But if they feel he's the guy, maybe that's possible. I think with the Colts, did Payton get along with ownership, who's been doing some crazy things lately with hiring Jeff Saturday, and I don't know where that's going to go. And I would be surprised if it was the Texans. That just seems like an organization that, while it does have, a lot of young talent and a very high draft pick, they've gone through coaches so much lately. And is that where you want to be after so much upheaval. I don't know, but to me, the Cardinals and the Broncos would make the most sense.
Out of the ones she listed, the Cardinals makes the most sense to me, but that is giving up the 3. You know, they're the 3rd overall pick right now, I believe. So they would be giving up the 3. And I mean, Peyton, I guess if you're the Cardinals, you already have your quarterback. Peyton could figure it out. And there's no way, if you're New Orleans and you give up Sean Payton for anything besides that number 3 overall pick, I mean, Loomis is, really lost it here. So I don't know, man. I mean, I think there's too many options. Like they keep throwing these teams out there. I really don't think that is as many teams as they're saying. Like they keep saying Carolina, they keep saying Houston, they keep saying Denver. I don't think it's any of those teams. I think it's pretty much now. If I'm going to take the Saints out of it, the only teams that I can really see would be Arizona, would be the Raiders, and that's about it. There's really no other team. Dallas too, because I could see Jerry. If I was ranking them, I'd probably have New Orleans 1, Dallas 2, Arizona 3. Would probably be my 3, the 3 landing spots I see most likely for Peyton.
Is there a wild card?
Dallas.
I mean, I guess the Rams, if McVay retired or stepped away, but the timing of that seems like it wouldn't line up. And then the Rams would have to want Peyton, and I'm not sure if they do. So I guess that would be the wild card, but I feel like McVay would have to make a decision pretty quickly.
He's retiring. Sean McVay's retiring. I'll go ahead and tell you all that. Sean McVay will not be the coach of the Los Angeles Rams next year. You can go ahead and bookmark this. I'm filming this on January 10th. Bookmark it. Do whatever you want. Sean McVay is not coaching the Rams come next season.
That was going to be the case, and I seriously doubt they wouldn't tell him to take all the time that he needs.
Kat Terrell's with us. She's on Twitter at @Kat_Terrell. We're talking about Sean Payton and what may be out there. Okay, so the Saints have Sean Payton's rights through the end of the 2024 season. So 2 more years, essentially. How does the compensation, or does the compensation shift year to year? Meaning, if Payton doesn't go anywhere this year, does it lessen or strengthen the market for him next?
Obviously, like this is just like the most simple business. The longer Payton goes, the less compensation will be, because the less leverage the Saints will have. Obviously, right now, the Saints have the highest form of leverage because they have the longest time they could possibly hold on to Payton. So if you want something really bad and someone says, I'm not giving it to you for 2 years unless you pay me $50, you may be willing to do that. If it's, I'm not giving you this for 2 days unless you pay me $50, you may say, you know what, I'll wait 2 days. I don't give a shit. The longer Payton holds out, the less the compensation is going to be, until, obviously, if he holds out the entire way, there will be no compensation. So towards the end of that, the Saints may say, damn, this dude's really going to wait this out. All right, fine, we'll trade you for a couple seconds. So, I mean, that's just simple business there.
Next year, potentially?
I think the compensation would drop enormously. If you look at the Bruce Arians trade or whatnot a few years ago, the Bucs only got a 7th-round pick for him.
I mean, what's going on here?
He retired, and then he came back very quickly, but he only had a year left on his deal. So it didn't really seem like teams were going to throw a lot out there for him. I think the compensation was a lot more in the past for some of these coaches that had a couple years left on their contract. But, it's
not to mention, too, like, he'd be 2 years older. He'd be 2 years older. He'd be 2 years more out the game. Like, there's a lot of negatives that go to that. So that right now, as we speak, is, well, right around the draft, I think, maybe like a month, 2 months before the draft, which I guess is coming up, then that I think will be the peak of when teams will be trying to get Payton, because you want to get him in so that he can be involved in that process. But that, I would say right now, for the next 90 days will be the hottest time for Payton's market.
It's interesting with these other coaches, the major coaching trades that we've seen. like Parcells and Holmgren and Belichick, it all really seemed to stem around these coaches wanting more personnel control than their current team had wanted to give them. So it does make me wonder, was that a thing with Payton? Because Payton, I think, had a lot of control in New Orleans, and he's even said himself, it's not necessarily about the quarterback situation, even though that's a factor. It's how does he get along with ownership in the front office. So
yeah, and where does he get along best with ownership in the front office? New Orleans. So I think he knows, damn, I can do whatever I want. I have free reign. I own that team, basically. Shit, he might get equity in the team. He might get an ownership stake. I've said he should probably get an ownership stake if he does come back to some kind of sweetheart lifetime contract. He's done that much for the team in the city. The Saints are the city, so I would have no issue with what what they gave Gruden with the Raiders if they gave that to Payton. I think that would make perfect sense for everybody. Build a statue in front of whatever. Sean Payton to New Orleans is what Nick Saban is to Alabama. Build a statue in front of the stadium, name a street after him, give him his own drink down in the French Quarter. Who cares?
It'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, I think if he doesn't go anywhere this year, the Saints wouldn't get much for him next year.
You at ESPN.com, you laid out 7 examples of coaching trades. I think you listed in the last 30 years. Do you see any that maybe look like a similar comp to the Payton situation?
This is off the top of my head, but I would say the Gruden one, or the Gruden would be a trade. Well, it was a trade to Tampa. That might be it, because that was like making a move for a coach. But the thing with Payton, there's the trade aspect, but then there's the compensation aspect for Payton. Like, I've heard the Broncos thing. I've heard the big driving factor with the Broncos is that they want to pay Sean Payton $20 million a year, which of course he wants to do, but I'm not sure that they can give the Saints what they want, right? So when Gruden was traded, I believe that was a hell of a package that they got for John Gruden. So maybe she'll mention that. But this is a little different, because you have to have the coach has a ton of say in this. Obviously, he's basically a free agent. But the team also has a tremendous say in this. I think in the other examples, it's mostly like the team kind of making a trade as if they were trading a player. And that's not necessarily what's happening here.
I was working on this for so long that I feel like my brain went to mush. Mike Holmgren got an extremely long contract to go to the Seahawks. I'm not sure any teams are really giving any coach an 8-year deal after what happened with John Gruden. College teams are doing it. I think it's insane to do it for any coach. Why would you ever give, a coach that long of a contract, knowing you will probably be paying him to leave at some point, unless you're talking about Bill Belichick or Nick Saban. Belichick, that wasn't much compensation for that unique situation. I think it was like a 4th and 7th round pick for.
But I don't think that there wasn't any leverage there. Like, this is a totally different animal than that.
For Belichick, a 5th round pick and a 7th round pick. So Gruden is a ton of compensation. It would probably be somewhere in the middle of all these. Like, I keep seeing a 1st round pick. My question is, if it was the Cardinals, would they part with the 3rd overall pick? The Saints.
It's not. That's the wrong way to look at the question. The question shouldn't be, will the Cardinals part with the 3rd round pick? The question would be, will the Saints take anything besides the 3rd overall pick? I don't think they should. This is up to the Saints. If the Cardinals say, we're not giving up the 3rd overall pick, then the Saints just hang up the phone. That's it. The only team, that's what everyone keeps missing. The only team that truly has any is the judge in this, that can truly dictate this, are the Saints. Everyone else can say, well, the Broncos would give, 2 fourths, a second in 2027, and a first in 2031. They can do whatever they want, but the Saints have to lay out what they want. The Saints have to lay out and say, we want minimum, M-I-N dot, 2 first-round picks. Start there. Throw in players if you want to. Throw in other stuff. I don't care. But the first things I want to see are 2 first-round picks. If that's not there, you ain't getting them. Enjoy going 6-11 next year. Enjoy missing the playoffs again. Enjoy having a pissed off fan base. Enjoy searching for a coach. This is classic leverage, classic negotiation tactics. That is flat out it. The Cardinals, if they want Sean Payton, if they want him to coach Kyler Murray next year, and they get asked to give up that 3rd overall pick, they really only have one answer. The answer is, the question is, do you want Sean Payton or not? That's it. And if their answer is yes, they're going to give up that 3rd overall pick. And it'd be different if the Saints had a first-round pick this year, because then the Saints could say, like for the Cardinals, keep your 3rd overall pick this year. Give us your next 3 first-round picks. Whatever. Give us your next 2 first-round picks and then 2 seconds and a 4th at the end. I'm just making shit up. But the fact that the Saints don't have a first-round pick makes it even more important that they come out of this with a high first-round pick. I ain't talking about number 22 overall. I'm talking about top 5, baby.
Would be a static. I don't know if the Cardinals would want to do it. So if it's
of course they don't want to.
They automatically move down.
I don't want to pay taxes, but I do every year.
Round, because if it's the Broncos, they have the 49ers pick, so that's already very late in the first round. So I could see that team giving up a first-round pick, but obviously the Saints would want more compensation, but they might not be able to get it.
Do you know what? I mean, we've seen the reports that the Saints want a first-round pick. But as you just alluded, I mean, there's a giant difference between the 3rd pick or the 12th pick and the 30th pick. So
yeah, you cut that thing off at about 12. Anything under 12, don't even take the call.
So if it is a later one, do you know what else the Saints may covet?
Stack picks.
I'm not sure. I just know that it's obvious they probably want to start negotiating at a first-round pick. Doesn't mean they're going to get one.
No, start at 2 and then stack them picks. Seconds, thirds, just for days. I mean, what do you mean? What do the Saints want? Just say, I want 2 firsts, I want a second, and then I want a couple thirds. You pick the years, and then listen.
I do know that they've been, bracing or thinking about this really since the day Payton left, and I know that's how I knew if it had been a team in the division, obviously they were going to hold them to more. They want Payton to be able to coach somewhere if he wants, to be happy, but they expect to be compensated in return. And all the parties understand that. Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton have a great relationship, so it's not like the Saints are trying to hold him hostage. They're very grateful for.
And I would assume Sean Payton he understands that. He understands the Saints aren't just going to give him up, right?
But it's got to be something fair between all sides. And a few of these, I think the NFL has gotten involved, or at least I think that was the case with the Parcells trade and maybe the Belichick trade. But yeah, it's I'm not really sure what they'd want after the first rounder. What I want to know is if the Saints were already thinking about this when I know they're thinking about it. I wonder if it factored into their decision last year to trade for another first-round pick, that they were always thinking they would get a first-round pick this year.
Good question. Interesting question, because I'm assuming Catherine probably has watched my channel. I mean, who hasn't in New Orleans? But I kind of raised that question myself, and it wasn't so much about that pick. It was more about the way they handled the offseason, the way that Loomis handled Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael and Dalton and Jameis, where it just seemed like Loomis knew. It seemed like he knew, all right, look, I got to give Sean a season. Breeze is gone. What are we really going to do? And I think he decided, you know what? It doesn't make much sense for me to go and make some huge splash and try and hire, whatever, Brian Daboll or something. Instead, I'll just chill rework the books a little bit here. See if we can't scoop a high first-round pick. Let Sean come walking back through the door, and then he'll be re-energized, and we can reset this whole thing. And that makes so much sense to me. That makes a ton of sense to me, which is why I think it's probably what happened. That doesn't it make sense to y'all to give? And let me know in the comments below what you think. But doesn't it make sense that you would let Sean come back a year after this dismal last year? Sean comes back, looks like the savior, and you can go get him a top 10 pick if he wants to take a quarterback for his future guy, or let him have a say in free agency. There's a lot of good free agents out there. It just makes way too much sense to me that Loomis and Payton have had this plan going into the offseason last year.
Sure.
So you tap danced around it was literally the note I had just written down that I wanted to ask you.
Well, yeah, I was kind of just rambling. Sorry.
So, no, but you've alluded to, and we've heard that before though, Kat. Like when the Saints made the decision to trade for the deals they did for Olave and Penning, they knew they were likely going to get compensated for Sean Payton. Do you know or believe that to be the case?
Yes.
I don't know if that factors into their thinking for that specifically. I do know that the Saints, from the very beginning, kind of always assumed there was a good chance that Payton would be coaching again in 2023, just somewhere else. So I
also think first-round picks are generally overrated for teams. Like I think the Saints trading away a first-round pick, I don't think they thought they'd be as bad as they are. I don't think they thought they would have a top 10 pick. So that that factors into it as well. If I was a general manager, I'd be much more loose with first-round picks, and I think teams are generally right now.
I think they always thought there was a chance for compensation. I'm just not sure if they thought when they made the trade, hey, we're getting a first-round pick back next year, or if they just thought, hey, I really want these two guys. Because the two draft picks they ended up getting are basically the guys that people said they would be getting from day one. Everyone said Olave was a very good prospect to go to the Saints, and everyone knew that Sean Armstead probably wasn't coming back, and they needed a left tackle. So, it's possible that they just said, hey, we're just going to go in for these guys, and whatever happens next year, whatever happens. Because Mickey Loomis has been around long enough to know that nothing's guaranteed, and Payton could decide, hey, you know what, I kind of like not coaching, and I'm just never coming back.
Do you know what kind of timeline or best guess as far as a timeline for this to be rectified?
Now to the draft. Now to the NFL draft is going to be where this really heats up. Because these teams, like I'm telling y'all, the Broncos, the Cardinals, now they fired Kingsbury, Dallas, if they lose in a couple days here, those teams are going to want to act fast. Because they're going to want to put this season behind them. They're going to want to show their team, their fans, their franchise, whatever. They're going to want to show them, hey, we're all in. And then they're going to want that coach, Sean Payton, to be able to go to free agency, to be able to plan for the draft, to be able to get his assistants in there, to be able to meet the team, to be able to go over the roster. So there's a lot that has to be done. So I think this will heat up dramatically. If Sean Payton does not get traded by the time the NFL draft is over, then I think he'll sit out next year.
He can't interview anywhere until the 17th, which is what's really kind of weird. The NFL holding him to that rule. Yeah, I know the Saints hold his rights, but he's not currently coaching, so that's kind of odd. So we're not going to get any resolution to anything until at least next week. But you would assume that no one wants to drag this out, right? Because you've got a lot of decisions to make. I mean, first of all, the Saints need a quarterback, and if they're going to go out in the market and start looking at quarterbacks, for example, if they wanted to trade for Derek Carr, well, Derek Carr's salary, his massive salary, becomes guaranteed on February 15th. So if they have a first-round pick, maybe that changes their mind about how they approach a quarterback trade and the draft. Look, all of this, for many reasons, needs to get done quickly, but usually you want to start seeing things in place before the Senior Bowl, because that's when staffs are finalized and, hires are made for next year and things like that. And that's coming up at the end of the month.
Kat, before you go, I think all of us are assuming that the New Orleans Saints are going to try to draft a quarterback. Are you of that opinion as well? Like that's the target with the with whatever asset they might get for Sean Payton, or is there another target they have in mind?
If they are smart, and if that's the plan, if the plan is like, hey, we need a quarterback, and that's what they want to do, then they sure as hell better know where they better have some kind of idea of like, all right, well, we better be top 6 or we better be top 3 because we want this player blank, whether it's Will Levis or CJ Stroud or Bryce Young or whatever. If they don't, if they're just like collecting picks and they don't have a plan, then I don't think you just like, if you get the 23rd pick, I don't think you just pencil in like, all right, we're taking whoever the best rated quarterback we have on the big board, we're taking them at that pick. You know, like if you get the Arizona pick, if you get 3rd overall, yeah, you're drafting a quarterback for sure. If you get 22, maybe not. Maybe you trade down a little bit more. I don't know, but I think that they want to. There's 2 options. I mean, there's 2 options here. The Saints can draft a franchise quarterback, which would have them. They would have to get it back into the first round, high in the first round, top 15, I would say. Or they can get a free agent quarterback, a Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Lamar Jackson. So that's easy for them. They got to decide one of those 2 and then move.
I would think if they got a high enough pick, that would be what they're thinking. But, you know, it's hard for me to think that way until I see what they get for Payton. But if they did have a pick, yes, I would think they would draft a quarterback. You know, they can make a trade for someone like Carr, but you're paying a huge salary and then you're giving up more picks and you're not I don't know. It's not the easiest thing to do.
You don't have to trade for Carr. That's the thing with Derek Carr. You don't have to trade for Derek Carr. Derek Carr is not playing for the Raiders anymore. Let the Raiders figure out Carr. You know, like I would take Carr off the table, TBH.
It's why I keep saying I wouldn't be totally surprised if we just see Andy Dalton re-signed for another year and then they try to address quarterback next year, depending on how well they perform. I think you really got to look at every single option possible. But the one that seems the least likely is that Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback next year, just based on how vocally upset he was after they went ahead with Andy Dalton instead of him. Because now that Winston has been passed up several times, you know, when they started Taysom.
That for sure isn't happening. Winston's gone. Winston will not be a Saint next year. I could see them bringing back Dalton. I think Dalton played pretty well. And if they end up drafting a quarterback, Dalton would be a perfect guy to kind of lead him at the beginning of a season or whatever until the transition. So I think Dalton will re-sign, but I think Winston is already leasing out his apartment.
Over him when they went and got Deshaun Watson. When they started Dalton over him, you know, if I were him, I'd want a fresh start. I want to go somewhere else. So Dennis Allen said that doesn't really make a difference, you know, but I kind of disagree. I think he could factor in.
Agreed. Thank you, Kat. What a great video, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments below what you think. What is the asking price for Sean Payton? Do you think Sean Payton should, what do you think the Saints should get for him? Where's it start? Would you take 1 first, 2 first, 3 first, 4 first? What would you want to do? And if you were another team, this is the real question. If you're the Cardinals, what would you give up? If you're the Colts, what would you give up? If you're the Broncos, what would you give up? Let me know in the comments below. No one can do this like I do it. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.